10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from London, this is The Sunday Late Show with Shaniqua Edwards-Haid, and you are listening live.
Good evening, happy Sunday, and welcome to The Late Late Show with me, Shaniqua Edwards-Haid. Wow, we're already 8 days into January. Is it too late to say Happy New Year? Tonight, I'm joined by the amazing Hetty Still. And we're going to be discussing maternity, paternity rights, as well as everything else to do with that.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. #TT Radio.
It's Sunday. Wow. And it's January. It's 2023, which feels so strange. But here we are. And it's been a while since I've had a little show. So thank you for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I am Shaniqua Edwards-Haid. I am a primary school teacher. I work in a primary PRU, which is really interesting. It's challenging at times, but it's really rewarding as well. As well as that, I am a science lead, humanities lead. I am a governor for another primary school. I'm also an apple juice addict, which sounds so wild, which definitely sounds wild. And all my children are always like, Miss, you drink so much apple juice. You drink it all the time. So that actually leads me to New Year's resolutions. How many of you have actually set any New Year's resolutions? What have they been? Please let me know. You can at me today on Twitter. You can send me a message at SEHMiss. You can also message me on the Teachers Talk Radio account. We've got a new Twitter handle, and that is at TTR or at TT Radio Official. Very nice, very nice. So I've been thinking about New Year's resolutions. I love a good New Year's resolution. So mine's, the typical dry January, try not to drink apple juice, having a bit of a social media cleanse, which has been great. But actually, for example, my Twitter, I've not been on it as often as I usually am. So, pros and cons with that, pros and cons. And trying to read more. I feel like I tell my children to read all the time. But actually, I have not been reading as much as I should have been. So I've been making that time for reading. I'm going to be introducing my guest, Hetty. But actually, Hetty, if you don't mind, do you have a New Year's resolution?
Oh God. I think, like you say, just the standard, just try not to, eat a mince pie with every meal, try and not drink every, mulled wine or something every single day. Just sort of be a bit more normal, be a bit more restrained, be a bit more in moderation. But this year as someone told me, which I quite liked, it's all about taking up things rather than giving things up. So yeah, the reading thing is quite nice. Like do a bit more of that maybe.
Thank you. See, I like that. See, taking up, because I am struggling with the giving up. So I love the taking up things. I'm gonna take up a few things, dance class, a few other dance classes, all of that. So yeah. And actually, Hetty, we've got you here now. So I'm joined tonight by Hetty Still. Hetty, if you can tell us a bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So I am, Hetty Still. I'm head of drama at the moment at a state school in Hertfordshire. It's an all-boys outstanding state school, which is really lovely. I've had the privilege to work in a variety of schools, all different types of schools, which I'm sure we'll get more into as this conversation develops. But yeah, so I'm head of department at the moment for drama, which has got all sorts of extracurricular activities, which for maternity and paternity talk is quite interesting in terms of work-life balance from that perspective. I've got two children who are 3 and 1, and on my maternity leaves I sort of connected with Maternity and Paternity Project, who sort of brought me to this show today. So just here to talk a little bit about maternity and paternity from that kind of classroom teacher and maybe the middle leadership perspective, I guess.
Oh, thank you. And I'm definitely in need of your advice and just help. Not that I'm having a baby right now. I don't want everyone to worry. I don't want my dad to be listening and thinking, oh my God, Shaniqua, I didn't know this. But actually, I just feel like it's an important topic that I don't think is discussed until, I find most people when they're actually having a baby or when they're going through the adoption process or, it's a bit later on and then they don't understand the procedures. And I started to think, I'm 29, going on 30, even though I look 20. And, I started to think, oh, if I want to go on when I want to go on maternity leave, can I? Do I qualify? I've just started a new school. What if I change schools? What's the actual procedure? And actually, I started to research myself and I was like, oh, there's quite a lot to it. I was reading about a Burgundy book and I was like, I know that most teachers do know about it, but during my PGC, I wasn't taught about any of that. So I was like, I really need to read my contract. I started talking to my cousin in America and she had a baby, let's say was it October? And then last week she posted on social media saying something about I'm back at work, maternity leave is over. And I was like, what? And it made me start to research what goes on in the UK. And actually, that's why I was like, I need a professional here. I need someone like the amazing Hetty here to just explain what is going on. So if we take it, just starting off, there's so much to it, but maternity leave, I don't even know where to begin with maternity leave. But what happens? What happens? Okay, I've become pregnant. When do I tell my school? When do I tell my school? Do I
Yeah,
have
I
to tell my
mean,
school?
well, yeah, from the beginning, it's all a bit of, it's not always 100% clear, but basically you're meant to tell school as soon as you know for health and safety reasons. So, which I didn't even think about as being a thing, but your health and safety officer, whatever they're called in your school, they are
Mhm.
meant to you're meant to have basically a health and a risk assessment for your job. So for drama, for example,
Ooh,
I wasn't allowed to go up a ladder to do any, which I don't do anyway, but I wasn't allowed to
okay.
do a lighting rig. You're not allowed to stand on certain things. You can't carry things. So for a teacher, you'd think, yeah, I'm not exactly doing loads of heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis anyway. But things like invigilating exams, so being on your feet, I wasn't allowed to invigilate a 3-hour exam, for example, because that was deemed a risk. So there are actually quite a lot of cogs that need to start turning. So yeah, basically you're meant to tell them as soon as possible, and then you go
Okay.
and see HR and you talk about you have to give a certificate. So when you go, it's all very medical, but when you first go to the doctor and you're pregnant, they log you, and then you get a
Mhm.
proof of basically a proof that you're pregnant, certificate. You have to go and show that to HR, and then they calculate your due date and
Oh,
when
wow.
your maternity leave can start from. And yeah, it all kind of starts from there, really.
Okay. Oh,
I know.
okay. Okay. I'm getting you. I'm getting you. So
It's
it's
a
kind of
lot.
like as soon as you know, because then I know some people who wouldn't want to say anything because they're
Yeah.
scared that maybe SLT or someone will tell someone else, which they shouldn't do. They shouldn't be doing at all. But then I guess there's also the risk of, you telling someone and actually in those early days and then having a miscarriage or something like that. And that's
Yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, I think it was just the way that holidays fell and everything. I think
Mhm.
I didn't tell my school until I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant. But then there are all sorts of funny, I wasn't allowed to tell, as I grew increasingly bigger and well, I wasn't allowed to tell the students that the job that was being advertised, obviously they're not stupid, they're
Of
advertising
course.
maternity cover for a
Yes.
teacher. I wasn't allowed to say it was me. And obviously they're all looking at me like, but it is you, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, I can't confirm or deny. And they were really funny about it. They come in with jumpers under their school shirts and be like, nothing to see here, miss. We're
Oh
not
my
talking
God.
about anything here. But yeah, some schools are really funny about, they don't want the parents essentially to be unsettled, I think, until there was a new
Yes.
teacher in place. They just said you can't say anything. So that was a bit comical. But yeah, they all have all sorts of rules about, yeah, who you can tell and who you can't. It shouldn't be like that, but yeah, some schools do
No.
have it.
Because because as well, you might want to tell someone, but you can't tell them, especially, if you've got a good relationship with your class and you might want to let them know, but then you can't let them know, I guess, because SLT have said, we don't want to unsettle everyone. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. And then that takes me on to there's so much. I'm like, there's so much to try and fit in, but antenatal classes and antenatal appointments. Did you ever go to any antenatal appointments?
Yeah, I think I did NCT, which is like, I don't even know what it stands for, to be honest, but it's like the kind of standard class that sort of it's quite expensive, but you meet loads of people in your area of a similar age. But that was never an issue because that was kind of weekend based or after school based. The midwife appointments, that was more of an issue because they are
Oh,
quite rigid. It's like you're having it on this week and this week, so there's no like, oh, but I've got a 4 or 5 period day that day. They are quite like, it needs to happen now, and you
yeah.
are allowed a certain amount of appointments. But there is this also thing, I think it's similar in terms of school, I find, with dentists and doctors, like you can, if you have to, like it's your right to be able to go to them, but there is
Yeah.
definitely this sense of like, oh, that's the second one this half term kind of
Yeah.
situation. So there's, I've never had anyone say you can't go, that would be ridiculous. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of this kind of, it all has to go in a document and they keep track of how many you've had. But yeah, that's your legal right, obviously, is that you have to go to your prenatal, midwife appointments. But the thing with pregnancy is like, which is a really good thing, they're very cautious these days, and you're monitored really closely, and you have extra scans for all sorts of things, but that can actually result in quite a lot of time. So if you're
Yes.
measuring your bump or something is measuring small or big, that can then be 2 or 3 days worth of appointments. Like you go to a hospital, you do some follow up this, so it can actually rack up. So I do, like I understand from a school's point of view they have to keep track, but yeah,
Yeah.
that can be an extra stress for sure.
That's really hard. That's really hard. And do you know what? The thing is, you get, some people have a pregnancy where they're not sick as well. I worked with a colleague and she was constantly sick. She had morning sickness a lot. And so she had quite a few days off. And then, she was getting really upset about it. And, the rules are, if I'm correct, an employee should not be treated unfavorably because of a pregnancy related to illness. And they're still entitled to sick pay. But obviously, as you know, schools do have to keep an eye on things. So it's quite a hard one. It's quite hard when people do get sick as well. Pregnancy is a
And
big thing.
there's a sort of, not a loophole is the wrong word, but there's a clause that's something about if you have a certain amount of sick days in the month leading up to your pregnancy, your school can ask you to start your maternity leave early. So
Yes.
rather than you keep having to go in and in and in, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but they can just say to you, if you need to go on maternity leave now, basically, you're taking too much time, which is like, there's a whole juggling act in terms of, because you pay wise, like when you're a first time mum, you're kind of like, oh, I might need a couple of weeks to just, get the house right. When you're kind of done it once, you want to leave it till the last minute. You want that pay to kick in right as long as possible. But some schools can be a bit funny if you're having like, I don't know what the number is, but a certain amount of days, and they can ask you to go off early.
Yeah, no, you're right. I've got it here where it says if an employee is off sick for a reason relating to their pregnancy in the 4 weeks before the expected week of childbirth, this will automatically trigger the start of maternity leave.
Oh, there you go, automatically.
That's so mad. Hopefully with discretion,
Yeah.
some schools wouldn't. But wow. And that makes me, we're going to get on to pay. But actually, I was working with a colleague recently, and she was working up until her due date, and she was like, I could have the baby right now, but she's like, I'm going to be at work, because she'd had a few kids, and she was just like, I know the process. I don't want to start my maternity leave earlier than I have to. And I was like, wow, that is amazing. But I'm finding a lot more people or women are doing that at the moment. They are going as far as they can. But that's because, from what I'm reading, is the maternity pay. That's another thing. That is another thing where, okay, this is where I'm a bit confused, and hopefully you can help me out. There's statutory maternity pay, SMP, if I'm correct. Okay. Now, for example, I've just started working in a school. I won't automatically get that. I think you have to be working for a period of time.
Yeah, 26 weeks. 26 is the magic number.
Oh, do you hear that, everyone? 26 weeks. Because, hey, People might be having fun and not realizing this is what can happen. Babies, and then have you worked there for 26 weeks? Now, can I ask, what happens if you've not been there for 26 weeks?
Yeah, so this did actually happen to me.
Okay.
It's not fair to say you don't, like, it's not a case of if you haven't worked there for 26 weeks, you don't get anything. That's not the situation. So statutory maternity pay is what the government pays. So even if you had no job, if you would be entitled to statutory maternity pay,
Okay.
I think that's correct. But the point is, if you haven't worked at a school for more than 26 weeks, you don't have any kind of so what would happen if you'd worked there for 26 weeks normally is that you would receive 90% of your normal weekly pay for the first
Okay.
6 weeks after the baby was born. And then some schools, depending on your academy or your trust or independent or state, they might keep that going. You might then be at 70% pay for another 6 weeks. You might be at 50% pay, and it might gradually scale down. And that is what tends to happen, I think, if you work there longer. That tends to be more of an option. But if you haven't worked there for 26 weeks, then the school has no obligation to do that. They don't have to do that, and you can go, I think, basically essentially straight on to statutory maternity pay, which I think is about £151 a week, and that's for the whole duration. So it is a bit complicated if you change schools.
Yes.
So I fell pregnant when I was working at one school, and then I started at a new school. But technically, I'd only worked at my previous school for 24 weeks at this point. So I was 2 weeks short of that magic number.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So if I had worked there for 26 weeks, it would have been even though my previous school knew I was leaving, it would still have been them that would have to cover, which I don't know, in terms of it being fair or not fair, I don't really know how I feel about that, but they would be the ones that would have to cover that first 6 weeks, not the new school. So the new school was basically like, yeah, whatever, like it's not our problem, you do you kind of thing. But because I hadn't worked there for long enough, I basically went on to statutory maternity pay straight away. So you don't have any kind of 90% of blah blah, you just go straight on to like a flat level. And actually not to complicate it further, but if that happens, it actually goes on to something called, it's got a different name, it's called maternity allowance, which is slightly different. Yeah, so it basically hopefully just illustrates that it's quite a complex system in terms of pay, and it's all it's not even in your contract, it'll be in your school's policy. If you've got any questions, go there on the shared drive to the handbook, because it will exist. But yeah, there's quite a lot of different ways that the pay can be set up, and it can kind of depend on your school.
Wow, there's so much to it. It does sound so complex, which is mad. Actually, even thinking that it's going to cost money. You have a child. It's going to cost money, but then you're losing pay, and as the months go on or the weeks go by, you're getting less and less. And you might have a partner who can support, but you might not have a partner who can support. And this is where it gets a bit complicated. And it's quite mad, because when I was looking, around the world, there's other countries who allow 100% or full rate salary through their maternity leave, even though some of their maternity leaves might be a bit shorter. But, Austria, Germany, Poland, Mexico, Spain, Portugal, Lithuania, whilst ours, 90%, and then it goes down and it goes down. So it's really something, like Hetty was saying, do check your school's policies. And if you don't see it, talk to your head teacher. Like, what's going on? So we have got statutory maternity pay. Okay, now that makes me think. Obviously, there's maternity pay, but what about paternity? What's going on with that? Is that something that's being discussed?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more part of the conversation. From as far as I'm aware, you're entitled to 2 weeks paternity pay. I know, or paternity leave or paternity pay, and it can be in a row, or you can split it up if you want to and have 1 week, and then wait a little bit for the second week. But yeah, unless your school, your company, your business, whatever, has a different policy, the standard allowance is 2 weeks, and that's at the same rate of pay as statutory maternity. So that I think it's £156 now actually. But yeah, that's the flat rate that you can get, that you're entitled to for that. So yeah, 2 weeks is nothing really, is it? Let's be honest.
No, 2 weeks is nothing. Like, especially, I think you'd have to plan the time that you want to be, with your partner and with your new baby. And it's just really, it's quite sad. It's quite sad that that's not
Yeah,
seen. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like it's not seen as important when it is just as important. I mean,
yeah.
2 weeks goes by very quickly. So I can see there's a conversation about that, and I hope we can raise that. Hey, I can start a petition about this. I'm sure there's many, but that's quite amazing. And actually, when I was looking at paternity, because I was like, can anyone say that they
Mm.
are the father of a child? So I was trying to read that up, and it says, paternity benefits are available to the biological father, husband or partner of the mother, or spouse or partner of the adopter. So if anyone's listening, that's what qualifies in a sense with paternity. Okay, so we've got that. Now I'm thinking, when I think about maternity leave now, you have up to 39 weeks, if I'm correct, in the UK.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
up to 39, which, in a way, if I look at Bulgaria's got them the longest, when they've got 58.6 weeks. We have got Greece with 43 weeks. We've got the UK 39 weeks. Now, don't get me started about America. With America, I believe they've got at least 12 weeks of unpaid family leave time after the birth of a child or adoption of a child, which is mad. Totally, to me, that's so mad. But wow. Okay, so maternity leave. When you're off on maternity leave, do you have to stay in contact with the school? Is there any discussions? I know there's keeping in touch days. I'm
Yeah.
going to take this back to you, Hetty, if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries. So I would say there's two things. One, maternity leave and maternity pay are
Oh,
not necessarily the same thing. So you
yeah.
can get paid for up to 39 weeks, but you can take up to a year, basically. So 52 weeks. So if you're prepared to take that final
Ooh.
13 weeks unpaid, you can do that. Like, you're allowed to do that. It's just that you won't get paid while you're
Oof.
there. So I know it's another thing. So it is slightly different. Yeah, but in terms of you don't have to keep in touch with school at all if you don't want
Okay.
to. But one of the good things is that a keeping in touch day you get paid for. So actually,
Oh,
people
good.
normally want to. Yeah, so you can get paid for up to 10 keeping in touch days over your maternity leave. And the deal is that so in school, for example, if that is, I'm going to go in for a meeting, or I'm going to go in for a department meeting, or I'm going to go in for a bit of inset, even if that's an hour long, they have to pay you for the full day. So that's a nice thing, I
Wow.
suppose, about the system.
Yeah.
In my experience, I found it quite it's not a case of you can be like, oh, I'm just going to pop in next Friday. The schools do tend to they want a timetable of what you're going to do. They want the impact of it. They kind of want to justify, which I get, why am I giving you a day's pay for this? So in my most recent pregnancy, I think I did. Oh, you can, if you do a course online, for example, so I did like a national theatre teachers course
Mm-hmm.
online, that counts as well. So they might sign that off. But I had 3 keeping in touch days in my last pregnancy. Just
Okay.
because it was a bit of a process, like getting it all signed off, and I do understand the reasoning, but 7 hours or 8 hours worth of work, they wanted to know, what's going to happen with this. So, but yeah, you are entitled to 10. So if you've got the motivation and you want, you're going to make it happen, then they can't say no. Basically, you've got up to 10 keeping in touch days that you can use, which is quite nice.
Okay. So up to 10 keeping in touch days. There could be a schedule. And to be fair, when I have seen colleagues come in, there is usually a bit of a schedule for what they're doing. And I've heard that there should be like reasonable employers are able to have reasonable contact with employees on maternity leave. But there is no prescribed description or definition of this.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone's reasonable is very different, very, very different.
Yeah.
But I guess that can be agreed before you went on maternity leave to agree,
Yeah.
am I going to be by my phone? Am I going to check emails? Should someone on maternity leave be being sent emails?
I mean, I was very upfront with my schools and just said, I'm deleting the app off my phone. I'm not going to be checking. So, like, if you need me, you're going to have to ring me because I won't be looking. I
Yes.
think if you're a classroom teacher, there's no need for you to be emailed. If you were, I don't know, a head of year or a DSL or or a SEN I don't know, a SEN lead in your school or something, and there was like a safeguarding issue maybe, or if there was something that urgently needed your attention, I
Yeah.
think that would be a conversation you'd have before you went. Like, I personally wouldn't mind at all if somebody with me and said, I'm so sorry to interrupt, can I have 5 minutes? It's quite critical. But again, I guess you
Yes.
kind of know that before you go on maternity, so you establish the boundaries. I've never had any problems with anyone like over pestering me, and actually I was a bit naughty and I then re-downloaded the app and was kind of like keeping a bit of a sneaky eye on it anyway, just to kind of like see what
Oh.
was happening. But yeah, I don't think you if I don't think you unless it's been agreed, then yeah, no, it's not that, it can't be that important. Like, just yeah.
That's it. That's it. Because I feel like, that time you have on maternity, you won't get back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's that time to just be away from school, be away from everything. But obviously, if there's important information, I'm sure that will be relayed back. And if you wanted
Yeah.
to keep an ear out, you could. And that makes you think, whilst you're on maternity leave, there might be promotions. And so I was looking up if you could apply for a promotion. And apparently you can apply. So the employee should be informed of any promotion opportunities or vacancies that arise during their leave. And yeah, they could go for it if they wanted to, which is something that if someone's thinking about, you are able to apply. So
Yeah,
yeah.
like it shouldn't be a discriminating factor in any way. Like, I've done it, but you can apply for a job when you're pregnant, you can apply for a promote. You should be able to basically just do what you would normally do, but with the proviso that you're upfront and you're honest and everyone knows the situation. But yeah, you can absolutely apply for a promotion during maternity, or if you're visibly pregnant or if you're early pregnant. Yeah, that shouldn't be a barrier.
See, God, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much, and I just want this to be an informative piece. And hopefully, you're enjoying this discussion, Hetty. I'm like, Hetty, you're like the professional to me. So I am here taking notes of everything you're saying. So Hetty and I will be back in a bit as we discuss more about maternity and paternity. But actually, there's a lot going on in the news right now with education. So we're gonna find that out, and I'll talk to you all in a bit.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
With the majority of pupils returning to schools this week, the new year has brought new announcements and new challenges for many in the education sector. Government advice about illness and staying away from education settings if you're sick was shared, and the issue of strikes remains a hot topic. Pressures on school leaders continue, with The Guardian reporting that many head teachers are broken, at risk of heart attacks and exhausted as a result of the erosion of services for children and families, meaning the burden of support is falling on the shoulders of schools too often. So, as the new year begins on a duller note than any of us might like, here are the top stories that have caught the eye of Teachers Talk Radio News this week. In Manchester, the Morning Star reports that students at one of the city's universities have launched a rent strike. Students at the University of Manchester are using the strike to press their demands for an end to what they describe as extortionate rents and their requests for a 30% cash rebate. Organisers say that more than 30 students per day are joining the protest, spurred by the combined effects of the cost of living crisis and poor quality accommodation provided at too high a cost. According to the National Union of Students, half of England's students are facing financial difficulty, with 3/4 of these saying they expect this to have an impact on their studies. A previous rent strike in Manchester in 2021 was successful, and students hope to replicate this outcome in this new wave of action. FE Week reports on Ofqual's decision to disband its committee of experts who advise on exam standards in favour of a more flexible approach on policy advice. The Standards Advisory Group has been active for more than a decade and was set up to help the exam watchdog maintain standards. Ofqual confirmed that the committee will be replaced to reflect a broader remit, such as expansions in vocational and technical qualifications and apprenticeships. Ofqual has faced criticism and upheaval over decisions and communication during the pandemic. Deputy Chief Regulator Michael Hanton described the change as positive and will secure quality and fairness for all those who take and use qualifications. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who recently announced his ambition to have all young people study maths to the age of 18, has faced a barrage of criticism about his plan. The newspaper reports that Robin Walker, chair of the Commons Education Select Committee, feels that the PM should be focusing more on the early years sector to boost education levels instead. He calls the maths plan highly challenging, citing the nationwide shortage of subject specialists as the biggest barrier. Mr Walker, Conservative MP for Worcester and a former Education Minister, highlighted issues around recruitment and retention as people with maths qualifications are quite employable elsewhere, so it is a highly competitive market when it comes to drawing people into teaching. He added that focus on the early years sector would be the most effective way of supporting children, describing it as embarrassing that England's childcare system is rated so poorly when compared to other countries. The eye also carries news of the decision by Catherine Birbalsingh to step down from her role as social mobility czar. Ms Birbalsingh, once dubbed Britain's strictest head teacher, has made the surprise announcement because she believes she comes with too much baggage, going on to say that her propensity to voice opinions that are considered controversial puts the Commission in jeopardy. Ms Birbalsingh wrote of her decision in a column in Schools Week. A controversial figure for many, but with an equally vociferous fan base, Ms Birbalsingh also commented that she felt the role of social mobility czar meant that she was becoming a politician, but that this was not a skill set she wished to develop. Finally, ITV News reports on how parts of a Turkish Airlines plane have been delivered to a school in Alveston, South Gloucestershire, to be turned into a new library. The project, named Flying High by pupils, will see parts of the plane turned into a new outdoor reading area. Full details can be found on the ITV website, with artist impressions of the final project showing children and adults enjoying the new space. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello! Did you know I've been doing this show for a year now? Well, if you didn't, now you do, so shower me in gifts and love. I'm kidding. But there is one person or group of people I want you to think about as this term draws to a close. Your tech support. They may, in your mind, be the people that say no to a lot of stuff. They may stop pupils playing games and stop a lot of the web getting into your classroom. But they keep you, your data, and your network safe. This week, as some of us are off, and others are desperate to be, roll on Wednesday, spare a thought for your techie. They'll be coming in over the break to patch and update. They'll be taking those broken machines and making them work again. These people, who in most schools are like ghosts, if Charles Dickens had had the privilege of tech support, they'd have been the spirits of modern-day make-do and mend. They wouldn't be draped in chains and padlocks, but come bearing an endless acceptable use policy. As you wind down, or if you have already, a thank you to your tech support will make your new year that little bit easier. Remember, next time you use tech in your lessons, everything is working because of them. As always, I'd love to hear what you want to know about tech. Let us know at TTR 2022. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech. Have a lovely break.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Oh, wow. That was some great information. And actually, it makes me think I'm going to go and say a big thank you to my tech support tomorrow. So thanks, Steve Woods. Congrats. And also, please do send Steve Woods a message if there is any kind of tech support you are interested in. You can tweet us at TT Radio Official now. That is us. Hetty, are you with us still?
Yes, definitely.
Hiya, Hetty. Hiya. So we've been delving into the world of maternity, paternity rights. Now, there's so much. I'm just trying to think of everything. And we will come on to life after maternity leave. But I've heard about, is it SPL? Is that ringing a bell to you? Am I making this up?
Shared parental
Parental
leave.
leave.
Is that
Yeah.
SPL?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is. What is that exactly? Is it something we've already discussed? What is it?
No, it is. So I did this actually. So it is, I think it's a fairly new not concept, kind of process where essentially, say you're a woman who traditionally would have had 39 weeks paid maternity leave, you can essentially, how I think of it is that you can gift that to your partner. So if you
Oh,
think I'm actually only going to take, I don't know, 30 weeks or 26 weeks, you can give the difference. So if it was, let's make the maths easy, 29 weeks, you could gift that remaining 10 weeks to your spouse, it would be kind of common sense in my head in that it would be at the end, but I don't think it has to be. I think it can be in the middle, it can be at the, you can pick where you take it, and providing that their workplace is set up for that, then they can have it. So they do. I'm not sure how it works with pay, to be honest. I think it is their pay, so, or if it goes on straight to statutory, I'm not 100% sure, but
okay.
yeah, then you can give what you would normally have got as maternity to somebody else. And it can be really great for dads that want to have more time with the baby. It can be great if, I don't know, if your partner's got a bit more flexibility in terms of their career and you want to go back for, I don't know, before a certain time frame. So yeah, I think it's a really good, really like positive, kind of like modernizing step that the government's kind of like made it possible that you can kind of give over this time to your partner.
I love that. I love that, actually. I feel like it's very modern, but I feel like it makes so much sense in a way. And if you can, like, it just sounds great. It sounds great. So anyone interested in that and wants to look more into it, that's shared parental leave. And it sounds like that worked out well for you as well.
Yeah, it was. It was a bit of a strange one for us because it was during COVID.
Oh.
So it kind of was a time when my partner probably would have been at home anyway, but it was still nice that like he wasn't on a laptop, he wasn't like checking something. It was just literally like time to kind of to ourselves. And if you are, I don't think it's sneaky to mention this, obviously, if you are a teacher, there are certain things like there is a way so you can go back to work for the Easter holidays, for the summer holidays, and be paid for that time. And then, so there are ways that you can do it that basically that benefit you the most. And it's legal, it's all above board. It's not like everyone, I went back to work with my youngest in June, late June, and everyone was like, oh, back for the holidays, are we? Back for the paid holidays over summer, I get it. And you're like, yeah, but also like, I'm entitled. You kind of have to have a little bit of like, that's what I'm doing.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So much sense. I remember being in the staff room last year with a teacher, and she was like, Shaniqua, if you're gonna plan your pregnancy, think about it like this. You want the summer holidays, you want to be able to have the summer holidays. Think about how you plan it like that. She's like, obviously everything doesn't go to plan, but that's also great. And she was like, don't feel guilty about it. And I was like, yeah, it's great. Thank you. Yeah. So that is something to think about, and people shouldn't feel guilty if that happens. Especially if we are teachers or we are in education. It's a tiring job, so we are entitled. But also that makes you think of most of us get pregnant, have our baby, but unfortunately there are times where you get to miscarriages and stillbirth. And actually it made me think, what are the procedures with that? And if I'm correct, I've read this up where it says where stillbirth occurs after 24 weeks, this is treated as childbirth, and an employee is entitled to maternity leave and other rights. A miscarriage or stillbirth prior to this is treated as sickness. So that's just extra information for anyone who might have gone through that, or that could potentially, you never know, that is treated as childbirth if it occurs after 24 weeks, and sickness if it's a miscarriage or stillbirth prior to that. So there's just a lot to think about. I'm very grateful in an age or an era where there is lots of paperwork online. You can find everything, a lot of things online, but also I'd say policies, as you said before, Hetty, just going through, finding everything on the school computer, on the school database to do with all the policies with this. Because that takes me forward to maternity leave. Woo! But coming back on maternity leave. Now, everyone I've ever spoken to, it's like when they come back, obviously you feel very different to how you left, especially if it's your first child. I found actually quite a few teachers, they've come back and then they've changed to part-time when they could. They've changed to part-time, which does make sense. How was it for you coming back the first and second time? Obviously different occasions, quite different.
Yeah. I have to say that I really enjoyed maternity leave. So I found it a really good chance to kind of do the CPD things we were all so busy that if you had an extra day in the week, like what would you do? What would you read? What course would you go on? I found it really helpful for that. So I don't know if that's typical or atypical, but when I came back, I actually felt quite like I'd kind of skilled up. I didn't feel like I'd kind of like been left behind particularly. I mean, I teach 4 days. Like you say, I came back part-time after my second child. So I teach 4 days and then the fifth day I'm doing a PhD, for example. And I wrote that proposal in maternity leave with my first child. And then when I was on maternity leave with my second child, I wrote a book, well, a student guide, but a book during that time, because that was something I'd always wanted to do. So I'm not saying that you haven't had a successful maternity leave unless you've like written a 1,000-page book. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But it can be a time just to give yourself, just to read that article you've always wanted to read, or just to do a little bit of CPD. And with hangover of COVID, there's so much available online that actually I found it a really positive experience. So when I came back, I was quite ready for it. I was quite up for it. I think I've said before that I got a new job when I was 12 weeks pregnant with my youngest daughter. So I went on maternity leave and came back to this like new job, which was like middle leadership, head of department, that I'd never done before. So then I had a new baby and this new job, which was a bit scary. But when you come back, you've just kind of got to be like, these are my boundaries, these are my red lines. This is when the big one for me is, when am I going home? Like when it's so easy, isn't it? It's never done. So you can stay in school until 5, 6 easily. And it's just kind of, so I had some like, I'm home by this time. This is what I'm doing. And you just set it up that way. And maybe it's easier if it's a brand new school as well, because if you're in a new department, you just say to people like, this is how it is. And then they can kind of, okay, fine, that's the way it is now. But yeah, I think you just have to be really clear with the people you work with about your boundaries, except that it's going to be different, because you are, and different doesn't always mean bad. You are different. Like you've now got different things to offer, but also you're going to have to, I am awful with asking for, like if someone's like, oh, can you just do this thing, this club, this after school, this trip? I always say yes. So then you have to be a bit more selfish, even if I'm like grumbling, like, oh, listen, and you have to be like strict with yourself and be like, actually, no, I can't. Or like, this is what can I do something else to make you? So you just have to be a little bit more like strict with yourself and strict with when what your kind of like red lines are and what you're going to do and not do.
Setting those boundaries, really.
Yeah.
Okay. You're giving such because you're giving such good advice, and I'm just, when you're saying it, I'm thinking of people around me that I've seen do these things. And actually, well, did you consider part-time actually when you went back? And have you seen that happen where people come back and
I totally
part-time?
get it as well. I think with I'm just trying to remember. I think I went back 3 days a week after my first baby, and then 4 days a week after my second. So maybe that's telling that I was kind of like, oh, actually, I've got my... And also, looking after kids is hard work. It's not like, it's childcare as well. We haven't even touched on that, like the cost implications, that actually sometimes it's cheaper to not go into work and to look after your own children. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, I think it's... people come back and they want some extra time, or it's a cost reason or whatever. Yeah, I think that's completely normal.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense, because honestly, from what I've seen to do with childcare and the cost, mad. It's mad. Just no, I'm like, maybe I need to work in a nursery because
Yeah.
maybe that's where it's at money wise, because whoa, it's really a lot. So, but I think it's nice if you do go to part time, if you do less days, you get to spend that time with your child. And actually, I think that's so great, because reading up about you know, women who go back to work after having a child, and I found a lot of them, you know, were talking about how they'd look after everybody else's children but actually don't spend enough time with their own sometimes, or you know, with the, you know, they can't afford to spend as much time with their own babies. So that's quite sad actually, when I was listening to that. But
Yeah, you'd
I get
think that education would be like quite sympathetic to that. I mean, I know childcare and education are not the same thing, but you'd think it would be sort of, you know, where we want our students to make as many levels of progress. We want to be supportive, and we want to keep them kind of like safe. And you'd think them, you'd sometimes, I do think like it doesn't really feel like teaching as a profession is set up particularly to support families. It's just, and that's no one school's fault. It's just kind of the way it is, that it's not. So my line manager was saying that the way that her schools in our area do it now is that for parents' evening, you get an email and you sign up to see the teacher you want to see. And if they're full, they're full. It's kind of like that's how it goes. And she's an assistant head. So by the time she's read that email and gone to sign up, all the places are gone. So because she's works in a school, she's then back of the line because she didn't get there fast enough to do it. And it's first days of schools and nativities, and you have to, maybe you can go, but you've got to do a leave of absence like 6 weeks in advance, and you've got to get some cover and someone to come. Like, that's so sad when people can't do like things like that, because it's like, well, school says no. You're like, oh, all right, thanks.
But then you work in a school, but then you can't go to your child's school. So it's just not fair, actually. And actually, even I think I read the other day on Twitter where someone was talking about, you know, they save what their sick days. So even when they're sick, they'll still try to go to work because they have to save those days when their child's sick.
Because they get like carer days are my big bugbear. I'm normally very like calm and control, but carer days are my really. So it's no like it's basically I've looked at a bit of research, and the policy seems to be like stay independent wherever you are. Blanket rule is you get 2 carer days. So that means that if you're if your child's ill, and if you like, I don't know if you know many 1-year-olds starting nursery, but they can do that in a week. Easy, like for a whole year. There's no way that two days is going to cover all the sickness, and then after that it's unpaid. So you're basically, so what people like, this is awful, and I've never, thankfully, because I'm an appalling liar, never had to do it. But what people do is just say I'm ill, because your own personal illness doesn't count towards that. So you just go, I can't come in today, I'm really sorry. But why put someone in a position where they've got to lie about who's ill? And the justification is so like, I think basically I do feel sorry for head teachers, because it's, the reason is basically that's how it goes, but they kind of got to be like, oh, it's got to be fair for everybody, you know, we don't want anyone to take advantage of it. But like, who lies about their child being ill? Like, who's actually going shopping when they've said that their child's ill? Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, I don't.
That is it.
Yeah, that gets me a little bit cross.
No, that one does as well. That one does, because I've heard, you know, I hope no head teachers are never, you know, listening, but I know people who've, you know, had to fake that they're sick, and it's for a good cause, because they're looking after their kids, like, because, and they were like, I won't get paid if I say it's for my child, but I will if it's for me, and you know, their kids are proper poorly, so it's just mad. But that's a good one to know. That's good to know. Hetty, am I missing anything? I feel like there's so much, but am I missing? Is there anything important that you think that people should know? And just
I think the only other thing that I kind of encountered, and this is maternity rather than paternity, but in terms of and maybe it's just the Twitter circles I mix in that this comes in a lot, but a lot of like mums return. Well, first of all, the Maternity Project has done some research which show it's got all sorts of different things, but one of the things it shows that the demographic of people, so not just women but people, men and women, leaving the profession in the highest numbers is women between 30 and 39. So there's clearly something going on, and the average in terms of a first-time mum, her average age in the UK is 31. There's something happening in terms of people are having, well, not everyone, but some women are having children and then leaving. So, and I think that's really, really fascinating. So, but one thing I kind of come across, like, people asking is about feeding and breastfeeding and going back to work, and I'm still breastfeeding my child, and how can I do it? Can I not do it? And I think, like with shared parental leave, like there are so many positive steps that are happening. Like, this is not me hating on schools or anything, or anything like that, but that does seem to be an area where schools, maybe it's just in education, they're not quite sure how they can support, and really all it is a quiet room, permission that you do what you need to do, and a fridge. Like, that's literally all it takes to let somebody pump in school and be able to, if they want to give that to the baby that way. But there still seems to be this kind of stigma about mums and teacher mums returning to work, and this kind of like breastfeeding aspect. Like, it came up this afternoon, that's all that reminded me of it. Someone was like, oh, I'm meant to be going back when my baby's 10 months and he won't take a bottle. What can I do? And I just remember that exact same thing happening to me. And I remember, not on my current school, but I remember asking the school, can I, my baby won't take a bottle, can I bring her to an inset day? And the response was like, we'd rather you didn't, but if you absolutely have to, you can. And that whole, like, the language of that I find really like, oh God. Because they're not saying no, but then it's not exactly welcoming, is it? And it's kind of like,
it's not.
oh, I don't know. Because I'm not saying it should be like a creche and we all like bounce our babies around at inset and no one does any work. But I feel like there just are sometimes, sometimes I think like, yeah, I get it. I get why women 30 to 39, and obviously there's loads of other things. There's cost and there's distance and there's illness and there's all sorts of other things at play, but sometimes it is a scary thing to go back to work after having a baby, and sometimes just those little like mini barriers, like it not being completely welcome or feeling a bit embarrassed if you were at an inset with your, like, I think that maybe that might be why. So I don't know what the point is, but I think that if you are a mum who's like a bit worried about going back because of a feeding issue or whatever, just have a conversation with your school. And loads of schools and HR departments and heads, like, not through any malice, but some of them just don't know, like they just don't know what they need to do to be supportive, or some of them aren't like fully read up on the law even. Like, I have had someone offer me an internal position and then I said I was pregnant and they were like, oh, and I could tell they wanted to be like, oh no, and I had to be like, do you want to go and talk to HR and bring it back? Because like, and just get it sorted. And like, yeah. And they were lovely after that. But some people who should know the ins and outs don't even know that. So I think just really open conversations, like, we're changing the future. So let's just like build the bridges now and be like, this is the situation, this would make me feel comfortable. Is that all right? Just be really open about it. Because like, there shouldn't be any barriers to returning, because why should there be? Like,
no,
it just shouldn't be a thing.
No, you raised so many good points there. I was like, because when you come back, it's not even that easy. Your body's still going through things. Like you said, some people are still breastfeeding. I remember being with someone who wasn't a teacher, but they were going back from maternity leave to their job. And but they were saying that, their breasts were leaking, the milk. And, I remember her saying, I feel so embarrassed. I'm still trying to work it out. And, and I was like, that's a big thing already. So there's just a lot, a lot. And I just want people going back to know that, there's lots of places and forums and people doing amazing things, fighting for the rights. There's so much online to do with maternity rights, paternity rights, and just people doing great things. And you're doing great things. I mean, I believe you're part of a group that does great things, or a project that's doing great things. So, thank you to you all for raising awareness as well, and doing research. Love it. Yeah.
Not at all. It's not me, I can assure you. I've literally just went looking for support, and you're right, if you go looking for it, there's so much out there. So yeah, don't, even if it's like has this happened to anyone else, like such like common question into the Twitter ecosphere or whatever. There's always, like, Twitter can be a dark place, but it could also be really, really supportive, and for this kind of thing it is like so perfect. So I don't know if you're a Twitterer, I'm sure there are other forums as well, but that is a nice place to go if you just want to ask a question.
Oh, it's so great. It's so great if you want to answer a question. And actually, Hetty, it's been amazing to have you on. If anyone does want to ask you a question or wants to get in contact, how can they?
Sure.
Yeah.
That segue was so good. It's you can tweet me. So I'm just singing Twitter's praises. So if you tweet me at Hetty L Steele, which is HettyLSteele, I've got all sorts on there. Just me twittering away and blabbering about maternity bits and Shakespeare bits, which is my PhD. So yeah, if you want to ask me a question, just go on there.
I might ask you a question about Shakespeare. There we go. There we go. I might ask. By the way, have you seen Anne Juliet? Sorry, I'm going off topic here. In the theatre.
I haven't seen it, but I know the whole soundtrack, like pretty much off by heart. Even my little 3-year-old's like bopping along to it. I really, really want to see it. Someone went to see it the other day and they said it was the best thing they've ever seen on the West End. So I was like, oh, for God's sake.
I hope you please do. Like, honestly, I think I went the other day for the 5th time, and it's so good. You know, and what I would say is that they it's finishing in March, so you know.
Oh no!
There you go.
Is it touring?
I have to research and see if they are touring. I don't know, but I just know that it being in London is going to be very sad. Not being in London anymore is going to make me sad. So yeah. But I'll check that out. I'll let you know, Hetty. I will check that out. Hetty, before we end, I always like to ask this question to all my guests, and I like to ask them, who is your favourite non-fictional teacher? Now, there is one that has been banned, and the one that's banned, and you might say it, so if you're going to say it's fine, but we've got Miss Honey. I don't know if you were going to say Miss Honey.
I wasn't. I thought you were going to say something else, though. Okay.
No. It's only Miss Honey because we had this conversation about, well, my kids actually in my class were like, Miss, she's too nice. She's too nice. If she was our teacher, they were like, they'd run rings around her. So and also, she was just taking the kids home and there was a lot of dodgy stuff. So we took Miss Honey off safeguarding. Well, to be fair, the whole of Matilda is just safeguarding.
Yeah.
Who was your favourite non-fictional teacher?
Okay, so I thought you were going to say you've banned Albus Dumbledore, who would
never.
be like, I was like, I can't be basic. I can say Albus Dumbledore because everyone probably says it. So my heart would say Albus Dumbledore, but then because I was trying to kind of not be super, and then I thought Walter White, but then I was like, no, I'd literally just be saying that because I was like, I can't come on and talk. Yeah, I can't talk about maternity rights, then be like, oh yeah, the crystal meth cooker. That's my favourite. No, I think my favourite it's got to be Snape, Severus Snape. The dry, put down humour is pretty much all of my behaviour management in one. Like that whole kind of, no, thank you. You can just leave that for now. Like, yeah, I think it's really Albus Dumbledore, but to be a little bit less basic, I would say Severus. I think I didn't even know I was that much of a Harry Potter fan until I started thinking about teachers. But all of them, all the teachers I quite loved. I was like, I could say Hagrid because he's like down with the kids. I could say Professor McGonagall because she's really like obeys the rules, which is me. But no, I think Snape. I'm going Snape.
Okay, you're going with Snape. Snape's a good one. Snape is a good. I spent New Year's watching Harry Potter, and actually do you know when I was thinking of my answer, so on my first ever show I think I said Albus Dumbledore, so I was with the basic crew too, but he's a legend. He's a legend, so I get that.
He is.
Except when he shouted at Harry that one time. It really upset me about the Goblet of Fire, but anyway. But actually today I was going to say Professor Lupin, Remus Lupin, because
that's a good one.
Actually, he was really trying to guide Harry, and actually, even though he was turning to wolf at night, he was like, I'm still going to persevere and try and be a great teacher during the day. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And Hetty, I've appreciated you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for just all the advice you've given and for sharing your experiences. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me. And anytime. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know. But thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely. And can you just give your Twitter again, just in case anyone?
Yeah, sure. It's Hetty L Steele, which is HettyLSteele.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed this show, if you have any questions, if you want to tell me about your New Year's resolutions or anything, please message me at SEHMiss. Please message us at TT Radio Official. I will see you in a month's time where we'll be talking about teachers just like me. So what is representation in teaching? I'll see you then. Have a good week.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.